So usually we run these workshops physically, and I try to make it as hands-on as possible because we know that that is the best way for children to learn. And so what this virus has actually forced us to do, though, is even in the way that we are teaching the children in our classes right now, it's obviously not as hands-on as we would like it to be. So I've tried to include a lot of pictures of the way this would look when you're working with children, and I've actually included a few of the examples of how we are teaching it digitally during this time as well. But yeah, I do encourage you, I'll be sharing some of the things that you can make. So we don't want you to be spending a lot of money in order for this to work for you. So throughout this workshop, I'm also going to be telling you ways that you can make this for yourself. Unfortunately, I can't show you, which I would usually do, but I've also again tried to include quite a few pictures. So I hope that works. If you do have any questions, you can put it in the chat and we can get to it afterward. All right, so this is focused on the preschool child. So I'm a preschool teacher. In my class, I've got children from ages 3 to 6. In the Montessori classroom, they are mixed age groups. So the things I'm going to be showing you now is specifically aimed at preschool children. The reason for that is that science has proven during certain times in a child's life, it is easier for them to learn certain skills. And the time for learning language and learning the alphabet and how to put it together and to read, the most easy time for a child to do that is between the ages of 4 and 6. That's for the alphabet. Learning a language, how to speak a language, starts in utero. So while the baby is still inside the mother's womb, they're already hearing the language she speaks. When they are born, however many languages they hear on a regular basis, they will be able to speak. And so that's why we start reading to children from when they are born. I know my sister was reading to her little girl while she was even in the womb, and we never stop reading to them. So that lays the foundation for them to understand when we're now starting to introduce the alphabet. If a child loves books, it's also a great motivation for them to want to learn the alphabet, because then they want to be able to read for themselves as well. And so a lot of what you're going to see in this workshop, I know when I was young, I only learned this when I went to grade 1. But once you go to grade 1 and older, that special time when your brain is ready to learn this, that has passed. And so yes, the child will still learn it. It will be a lot harder for them, and it will be hard work. In the preschool years, it's fun and they want to do it. Okay, so when we look at teaching children to read and write, we're obviously going to teach them letters. Now, if you have attended the Cuddle Trust Crash course, you will have heard this before, but I'm going to recap it. Each letter has got 3 parts. So the first part of the letter is the name. And that is what we as adults use. If you ask someone how to spell their name, if their name is Maria, they might say M-A-R-I-A. That's how I spell my name. And in the alphabet, when we want to recite the alphabet, we go A, B, C, D, and we all know that song. In the preschool years, we are not going to teach this at all. And bear with me, and I'll explain to you why. So yes, we all know that is something we use as adults. It is not helpful to the child learning to read. So let's stay away from that. I'm going to show you what we're going to do instead. The second part of the letter is the symbol. So that is the way that you write the letter. With a preschool child, we introduce them only to the lowercase alphabet, so no capital letters. And we use what in South Africa it's called the grade 1 font. And so here's why we do this. With a young child, preschool child, we teach them, it's almost step by step. The official word, if you want to Google it, it's called scaffolding. So you teach them one thing, and once they're good at that, you then add another thing. And then once they're good at that, you add another thing. And that way, you help them to build a strong foundation and a good understanding of whatever it is you're teaching them. So with the alphabet, the reason we start with only lowercase is because if you teach them uppercase and lowercase at the same time, that's two concepts. Now you're confusing the child. So we start with lowercase. If you open up a book, what are you seeing the most of? You are seeing more lowercase than uppercase. So we're introducing them to what they're going to be exposed to the most often first. Once they know the lowercase alphabet, they find it usually very easy to then link the uppercase letter to the lowercase. We do, however, use the uppercase symbol for the beginning of their name, because their name is a noun, and nouns always begin with, or the person's name always begins with capital. So we do use a capital if we are labeling, their locker or whatever belongs to them. But if I'm putting labels up in the classroom, maybe I'm saying this is the book corner, then book and corner is lowercase. It's all lowercase. And then I'm going to show you the grade 1 font. And it's important that you as a preschool teacher teach the child the correct way from the beginning. Because if you are going to teach them the wrong way or allow them to practice the wrong way, then when they get to grade 1, now they have to unlearn all of what they've been doing with you, and they have to relearn a new way, and it's now harder because they've already formed a habit. So here is an example of what the letters look like in grade 1 font writing. Now, as adults, we have developed our own way of writing quickly, and we have picked up bad habits, and we often do not write the letters the way that you can see them here, especially things like the T. We generally don't make the little curve at the bottom. The Y might look a bit different. Your K, if you have a look at the K, that also, as adults, we tend to not make it 3 individual lines. And another rule with teaching children to write is it has to be one fluent motion. So your A is not a circle and then you lift your pen and you write a little line next to the circle. You have to draw the circle, go all the way up, and then without lifting your pen, you come back down. It's the only time you're going to lift your pen, you can see at the bottom there, is when you are crossing the F and the T. Something like the K, like I said, the K is 3 individual lines, and your X is 2 individual lines. So when you are showing the child how to do this, and when you are writing labels for your class, it needs to be correct, because that is what the child is seeing, and you never know when they're going to decide to copy that. It happens quite often in my classroom. The children want to write each other's names, and we've got little name cards in a basket. They go and fetch the other person's name, and then they copy it from there. And if I have made that in a different font, then they're copying the wrong font and they're practicing the wrong thing, which makes it harder for them later. So from the beginning, you need to first, as an adult, go and practice how to write the letters like this. And once you are confident in that and you have practiced it, you can then show the children how to write correctly as well. All right, so that's how we write the letters. This is the grade 1 font. And so we covered 2 parts. We've got the name of the letter, which we're going to ignore for now, the symbol, and then this is what we're really going to focus on. The third part of the letter is the sound it makes. And this is called the phonetic alphabet, or phonics. So whenever you're reading a book and it's got to do with phonics, it means it focuses on the sound. And again, we don't use the phonetic alphabet as adults in general life. So it's something that you are going to have to practice. Your tongue will get very twisted and tired in the beginning, but in your classroom, in a preschool classroom, this should be the only alphabet that children ever hear. So I'm going to go through it with you a few times, and what we've got here is we have got a word, and when you say this word, the sound you hear, the letter make in this word, that is the sound you're going to teach the child. So for example, if I say apple, apple, if I listen, what sound do I hear? The a. Oh, it's a, apple, a. So when I want to teach the child what that symbol is, I'm going to say it's a. And this is how we write a. I do not say a. That the child does not need to know. He's going to hear the sound and he's going to know how to write that sound. And with those two pieces of information, he will be able to read, or she. Sorry, I keep defaulting to he, I don't know why, but he or she. All right, so I'm going to go through this a few times just so that you can hear it. And then you also going to need to practice this for yourself. All right, so a, apple, b, butter, k, cat, d, dog, e, egg, f, fish, g, goal, h, hill. You can hear the it's just some air that's coming out of your mouth. There's actually no real other sound to it, because in a word, that is what it's like. So we don't want to go or ha. It's just hill, igloo. Now this is a tricky one, because especially if you're going to be buying charts or phonics books, please check. Often they make this an I for ice cream or iron. It needs to be E for igloo or ink. And again, going back to that scaffolding principle, we're first going to show the child what they're going to learn the most, and then we add the exceptions. So when you are reading a book, there are not ice creams and irons in every book that you read, but there are words like it, is, his, him, and in all of those words, it's an E sound. So we first teach them E, and later we explain to them there's sometimes that it sounds a bit different. So it's E, j, jump, k, kiwi fruit. Again, a question we get asked often, what's the difference between the C and the K? There's no difference in the sound. It's k, cat, k, kiwi fruit. Sounds exactly the same. L, lolly, n, mouse, n, nest, o, orange, p, pumpkin, qu, quilt, r, rabbit, s, sun, t, table, a, umbrella, v, van, w, wet, x, fox. Again, if you're going to look for charts, this is one where usually they're going to have a xylophone. And the xylophone does not start with x, even though it's written with a x. So what we try and do is we look for things that end with x, or if you really want something that begins with x, the closest thing you're going to find is an X-ray, but again, it actually starts with an A. So ideally you look for things like box, fox, six, things that end with X. Then it's yellow, and z, zip. I'm going to go through it once more. I'm not going to say the words. I'm just going to say the actual letters. So, a, b, k, d, e, f, g, h, I, j, k, l, m, n, o, p, qu, r, s, t, v, w, x, y, z. And that is the phonetic alphabet. That is what you want to be teaching the children, preschool children. That's the only alphabet that they need to be learning. Once they know this very well, I promise you they will eventually connect that, oh, A is also called A, because they know the songs and they will be exposed to that as they get older. But the reason that we are teaching them these sounds and symbols is because we want them to be able to read. And the method that we are going to show you today is called the blending method. So we take each individual letter, and when we put them together and we sound them out, it forms a word. So for example, at, if I blend them together, I pretend I'm gluing them all together, cat, I'm reading cat. But if I am looking at the word cat and I say C-A-T, C-A-T, C-A-T is never going to form cat. So that is why we focus only on the phonetic alphabet and the lowercase symbols. So for the next bit, I'm going to show you some practical ways of how we introduce these concepts to the children in the classroom. We start with the letter sound. Now you can teach the child the letter sounds from 18 months, 2 years old. They can already be playing sound games and be introduced to the different sounds of the alphabet. And one of the most popular games that we use is called I Spy. I'm going to show you some examples of I Spy, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this. In the classroom, we try, and in the home setup, we have little toys. So it's just your animal toys or things from the doll sets, and we play with these little toys because that makes it the children are interested in it and they want to be able to play with the toys. The example I'm going to show you today is how I've been playing it digitally with my children in my classroom over these last 2 months. But ideally, we want to have real things that they can touch and play with because that keeps their interest. So you can see in that picture, the little boy and girl have got those objects in front of them that they are playing with. So I Spy is a very effective way of teaching the letter sound. As I said, I'll give you an example in a bit. You can also ask them to find objects and pictures of that letter. Ideally, they'd have played I Spy a bit first because they need to have an idea of what it means. But you would, for example, say to the children, can everyone please fetch something that begins with a B? And if they've played I Spy a bit, they might know, okay, I can fetch a ball or a box, or I can fetch something that's blue. And if they're bringing those kind of objects to you, you know that they understand that the sound you are saying is connected to that object. That's what it starts with. We always start concretely, so working with real things, real objects. And then once they've done that a bit, you can also ask them, give them a magazine, and then you say to them, okay, let's look through the magazine and cut out things that start with the k, or whatever sound you're wanting to teach them. And they might cut out something like a cake or a cup or a car. And when you do this with a child, this would be, so I Spy and fetching objects that I would easily play with my 2, 3, 4-year-olds. Cutting things out of a magazine would be more your 5, 6-year-olds, just because they need that fine motor skills of cutting. And they need to be able to concentrate, because if you give a child a magazine, there are lots of pictures. And so it's almost like a test for a preschooler, because you're saying to them, okay, we're looking for things that start with a K. And if they bring you things like a car and a cup and a cake, then you know, okay, they understand the concept. If they bring you the Barbie doll and a beautiful necklace and, I don't know, a picture of the sun, just because they thought those were pretty, then you now know as a teacher, okay, either they don't understand what I'm asking them, or I need to work on building their concentration because they got distracted by looking at beautiful things instead of looking for things that start with a K. So that's why in the crash course, we encourage you to collect magazines. We use it for quite a lot of our concepts. Then another fun game that we have to teach the letter sound is called the animal game. And this is a nice game for those times when you have the children with you and you're waiting, maybe you're waiting for lunch or you're waiting for the parents to come pick them up. Maybe it's a rainy day and you can't go play outside. Now you need to keep them busy inside. And so we play what we call the animal game. So I might, if some of my older children are quite good at this already, I might say to them, okay, let's think of an animal that starts with D. And someone might say duck. I say, all right, we're all going to be the ducks. Let's quack like a duck. And they all move around the mat and they're pretending to be ducks. And then we freeze. All right, let's think of an animal that starts with a L. And another child might say lion. All right, we are little lions. Let's move around like lions. And obviously they're going to roar and hopefully not try and bite each other. But it's a nice way to get all of them moving. Remember, there are some children that learn by movement, so we need to include them. And it's a good way to also again see how much do they understand, because if they can give you correct animal names, then you know, all right, they have a good understanding of the letter sounds. If you say to them, let's think of an animal that starts with a and they go zebra, then you know, all right, I need to play a bit more I Spy with this child because they need some more reinforcement. Okay, so those are just 3 of the games that we use to teach the letter sound. I'm going to show you some examples of I Spy. Now, when we play I Spy with your youngest children, I start with one object, just one toy or one picture in front of them. So it might just be the cat. And I say, I spy with my little eye something that begins with a k, and it can only be the cat, because I want them to understand that the sound I'm saying is connected to the object. And once I can see they have that understanding, I will then have 2 objects. So I might have the cat and the ostrich. And now I can say, I spy with my little eye something that begins with a k, and they have to decide, okay, is it the cat or the ostrich? As they get more confident, I then add more and more objects or more and more pictures. And for, you know, my older children, my 6-year-olds, there might be 6 or more pictures on a page or 6 or more objects on the mat that they need to identify which one begins with that sound. So this is actually an example from, this is one of the lessons I'm doing online with my children at the moment. So I say, I spy with my little eye something that begins with D. And if they say duck, then the duck spins around. I spy with my little eye something that begins with k, cat. I spy with my little eye something that begins with R, ostrich. So they just, I give it a little animation to make it interesting. So we start with I spy something that begins with, so the beginning sound. Once they're really good at that beginning sound, you can now play I spy something that ends with, because we want the children to understand that words are made up of different sounds put together. So in this instance, I would say, I spy with my little eye something that ends with a B. Okay, so then I'm looking 10, web, fox. Which one ends with a B? Aha, it's a web. Make sure that you choose pictures or toys that end with one sound. So you can't say, I spy something, you have a fish and it ends with a H, because it ends with the sh sound. So make sure when you're choosing toys or pictures, it's usually safe if you stick to things that are 3-letter words. You'll see everything I've used here are 3-letter words, because otherwise you are going to get tripped up by those double sounds. Okay, I spy with my little eye something that ends with a x. Fox ends with a x. I spy with my little eye something that ends with a n. 10. Okay, now you've played I spy with my little eye something that ends with quite a bit, and the child's quite confident. As I said, again, you would start with one object, then build up 2, 3, 4. You can play this with one child at a time, or it's quite a nice activity to also play in a group. Okay, so we've done beginning sound and end sound. Now we're going to do a middle sound. So again, it's safest if you have objects or pictures of 3-letter words, and it's going to sound like this. I spy with my little eye something with an A in the middle. So now the child's saying these words in his head: bed, bus, doll. Where do I hear an A? The bed has an A. I spy with my little eye something that has an A in the middle. Bus. I spy with my little eye something that has an O in the middle. Doll. So there's these three levels of I spy. First the beginning sound, then the end sound, and then the middle sound. And you will see, as if you've got older and younger children together, pretty soon your older children are also able to lead the I Spy game. In the Montessori classroom, we work a lot with children teaching other children, and this is something that my older group really enjoy doing for the younger ones, is they are the one who's spying and the younger child has to find what it is that they're spying. Okay. So once they've been exposed to the letter sounds, then we're going to add to that knowledge. We're going to say to them, okay, this is how you write that sound. So please just make a note. They need to first already know the sound, and then we show them how to write it. We don't teach them the sound by writing it down for them. Okay. Let's have a look. All right, so some of the ways that we teach in my classroom, but you can also do this. I'll tell you some ways to DIY this. Is we have textured letters. Now, in a Montessori classroom, these are called sandpaper letters, and it's literally a piece of wood, and letter is cut out of sandpaper and glued onto the wood. So it is something that you can make for yourself. What I've also done before is you get the same effect as if you have cardboard, so your cereal boxes, and you write the letter, and you put white glue over the letter, and then you put either just really fine sand or mini meal. Works very well as well. And once it's dry, it's got exactly the same feeling. You can also, some children really don't like that rough feeling. So for them, what I've done is I have glued wool onto cardboard, and they can still feel it. But the reason that we want them to be able to feel the letter is, and you'll have heard this in the creche course as well, is children learn through their senses. And the more senses you can involve, the better the child's going to remember it. So when you give them a textured letter, they can see it. And so that's one sense. They're hearing you tell them what sound it is. So that's a second sense. And they are feeling it. So they're using 3 of their senses instead of just looking at it on a chart, which is a much less of an effective way to teach this. What they're also doing with these textured letters is they do not need to be able to hold a pen. We'll talk more about when a child's ready to hold a pen in a bit. But a child under the age of 5 is not supposed to be holding a pen and writing on a page. Their hands are not ready for that. I'll show you in a bit. But so with these letters, they trace it with 2 fingers. They use their pointer finger and their middle finger, and they trace over it. And you'll see these letters are quite big. So they're using their whole arm is moving. And what we're using there is called muscle memory. Now, the amazing thing about muscle memory is that you never forget something that your muscles learned. So examples of this is swimming. We don't swim for the whole of winter, but when we get back into that pool, we find actually we haven't forgotten how to swim. We still remember how to swim. Driving a car is the same. When you start driving that car, it's very confusing. You have to look in 5 different mirrors. You have to be changing the gears. Your feet have to be working at the same time. There's indicators. There's a steering wheel. You're going fast and you're going slow. It's very confusing and very difficult. But because your whole body is involved in that process, once you've mastered it, you can stop driving. I know there was a time that I didn't drive for a month or 2. Well, actually now, in the lockdown, I haven't driven for a month or 2. But I know that when I get back in that car, I'm going to know how to drive. I haven't forgotten how to drive. The same thing with riding a bicycle. Your whole body's involved. Once you've mastered how to ride a bicycle, you cannot ride a bicycle for years. Once you get back on that bicycle, you might be a little wobbly at first, but pretty soon you're going to be able to ride just the same as you did before. And so that is why with children, we also want to get their muscles involved in the learning, because it just helps them to internalize it so much better. So that is the power of having these textured letters. And we, in a Montessori classroom, we do 3 letters at a time. The reason that it's 3 is that if you do 1 letter, the child, you don't know whether they really know it. If it's 2, they can guess and still maybe be correct 50% of the time. But if it's 3 letters, then they really do need to really know. So when you're asking them, okay, which letter is this, they can't just guess and guess correctly. So you have a good way of understanding, okay, I need to practice more, or they already know it now. Another way that you can help them to just recognize the letter shape or symbol is, again, get out those magazines and we make a letter collage. So I might, the picture on the left, I might draw the first one, so I might draw a K, and then I give the child the magazine and they need to find as many of those as they can. And so it's just reinforcing, they need to look at all the letters and pick out that letter that we are practicing. The little girl on the right, what she's doing is we've actually written her name, and now she's looking for her name in the magazine. So again, it's just reinforcing that letter shape and symbol. What I've also done, it kind of goes back to textured letters, and the children really enjoy this, is they make their own textured letters, and we try and connect it in some way to the sound. So for example, if we're practicing the letter B, then I will give them something that starts with a B to glue onto the B, or they might paint it blue. So when they're looking at it, they get a clue. It's blue, blue, that's a letter B. Or if it's a W, they might glue wool onto it. And if it's on the wall with some wool, it gives them a clue, so that next time they're looking at it, they're like, okay, wool. And if they've played a lot of I Spy, they'll quickly pick up that first sound. So you can, for example, what else have we done? R for rice, P for pasta, M for milli meal. We've done G for glitter. So that keeps it exciting for the children as well. Instead of every day just reciting a chart, they're coming to school and they don't know. They're doing art and they don't even realize actually they're learning their letters. All right, so we spoke briefly about writing. What I've got here is 2 x-rays of children's hands. So the child on the left is the hand of a 5-year-old, and on the right, we have the x-ray of a hand of a 7-year-old. And you can see that there is a huge difference between the bone structure of a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. They have realized that between the ages of 6 and 8, a lot of bone growth and muscle growth and just solidification of the bones happens. And this is why it's not helpful to try and make a 2, 3, 4-year-old write with a pencil and hold it correctly and make nice, neat, small letters and color inside the lines. Their hands are not ready for that. They're literally not ready for that. It's not something that you can make happen faster. That is something that has been every single person, that is the developmental phase between 6 and 8 is when that growth happens. And so our job as teachers is to make sure the activities that we do, the child does need to practice writing the letters, but he can do it or she can do it in a way that is right for her body or his body, rather than trying to force them to do it in a way that is not. So the activities I'm going to show you, you will see they either don't need to be holding a pencil, or they're going to be making very big movements, because also a young child, I'm sure possibly in the previous workshops they've touched on this, but they first get control over their gross muscle movements. So that's your big muscle movements, when you're moving your whole arm, your shoulder, your body. Your fine muscle movements is when you're literally just moving the muscles of your wrist and your fingers. So things like writing with a pencil, cutting with scissors, threading little beads, that is all fine motor movements. And a preschool child is still busy developing those movements. They have not mastered it. So we need to help them by starting with something big, and as we see they are ready for it, then we can give them opportunities to move into more smaller and more difficult activities. So here's one of the ways that we practice in our classroom. And the nice thing about this is it's very cheap as well, because you use this over and over and over, instead of giving them books or paper and then they make one mark on the paper and now it's not good enough and they want a new one. We write in meal or sand. You can also use salt. So you've got a tray, or I've also used the lid of a paper box. You put a small amount of meal or sand or salt in it. You'll see the little girl has got the example of the work in front of her, and she's copying it with her fingers in the meal and sand. What's also really nice about this way of practicing is there's no evidence for the child of how they're doing it badly. If it doesn't come out the way they want it, they just give the tray a little shake and they can start over. So it builds their self-esteem instead of them having this whole page of evidence of how they're not good enough yet. And we also do want to build the child's self-esteem. A child that feels good about themselves, that is confident, is more willing to try new things than a child who's afraid of doing something wrong and feels like they're not good enough. So that is something we always have in our classrooms. We always have a tray with something for the children to write in. You'll see with, if you find a child that is struggling to really control their hands enough to make those specific letters, you can start with patterns. And so things like the zigzags or bounces, we might say, let's pretend to be a bunny bouncing, from the line up and down again. Let's go down like raindrops, that bottom one, so you make it fun for the child. And the reason we have these kinds of patterns is because letters are made up of circles and lines and curves and zigzags. And so the child's practicing this, but it's also preparing them for writing letters. We use the chalkboard a lot. When a child is writing with chalk on the chalkboard, they've got a lot of sensory input, so they can feel that feeling of the writing, they can hear when they're writing, but it's also, again, goes back to being reusable, so it's cheaper for you because, the child just wipes it off and practices again. And the creche course, I don't know how many of you have attended that, but usually this workshop is after the creche course. We give you the idea of painting a section of your wall with chalkboard paint. That way you can have quite a few children, either drawing or practicing their letters or their numbers at the same time. Working together with a friend is a great motivator for young children, so that's another way to get them excited about doing it, and it's cheaper for you, and they're going to write on the wall anyway, so it might as well be on the chalkboard part of it, and then you don't have to worry about cleaning it up. I'm going to show you another way of using the chalkboard here. Okay, so this is something that the children quite like. We tell them they're going to do magic, and all children want to do magic. So we give them the chalkboard, then I will write the letter with chalk, and I give them some water and a paintbrush, and they go over my letter with their wet paintbrush, and it's magic, the letter disappears. And so they want to do it again, so we practice again. And they don't I haven't put any pressure on them, but what this is forcing them to do is to literally stay on my line, because otherwise the letter won't disappear. So it's really encouraging them to focus and really be very careful about if you have a nice big cement veranda outside, you can take them outside and you can paint with water outside on the floor or on the walls. Again, it's a cheap way of practicing and the children really do enjoy it. All right, so rainbow letters is another method I found works really well for children who are maybe a little bit tired of practicing letters. I usually do this on the chalkboard, but you can do it on paper too. So this is something that I've used when I have a child who's really not in the mood for anything. I said, you want to do some art? Do you want to make a rainbow letter? And they're generally quite keen on that. So we either use the chalkboard. Again, I write the first letter so that I'm sure they're practicing the correct formation. And then we give them all the colors of the rainbow, either with chalk or in this example, it was cookies. And then they trace over that letter with every single color. So by the time they've made their rainbow letter, they have practiced that letter 7 or 8 times. And they didn't even realize that they were practicing that letter 7 or 8 times because they were just making a rainbow letter. And now they've got something beautiful to go show their mom or dad if they did it on paper. All right, then with your older children, so we don't give our younger children books. They only get a book usually when they turn 6 in our classrooms, just to help them get used to the idea of writing in a book, writing starting on the left of the page and moving to the right, starting at the top, going down, because we know that the following year they'll be going to grade 1. Make sure that it's a book with wide lines, because again, we want to give them the best opportunity for success. So we want them to start quite big. And once they are confident, they will move smaller by themselves because they've seen the way that their parents write or that we write. They know that eventually they want to write small. There are a couple of ways that you can practice in books. Some people like to make those little dots and have the children trace over the dots. And I've not had much success with that. I don't really enjoy sitting for hours drawing little dots for children to trace over. And also I found that the children really struggle to stay on those dots. They really, it's probably harder than what they are ready for. What I have found, which works quite well, and that's what this little girl in the picture is doing, is you write the letter with a highlighter. Now the reason that works well is because the highlighter is a lighter color. So when they've done their letter over it, you can see where they have written and where you made the highlighter. And the highlighter is quite thick, so it's easier for them to stay inside of the highlighter. So that's what this little girl is doing here, and that has been quite successful for us. You'll see we only do a few letters, and then we encourage them to fill in the rest of the row on their own, because obviously for the rest of their life they're not going to have your guide. So that's how we use books. But again, this little girl would first have been writing in the midday meal. She would have done lots of work on a chalkboard. She would possibly have been painting a few of the letters. And only when I can see she's ready to hold the pencil correctly, she can concentrate for long enough to sit and do an activity like this, then we introduce writing in a book. I hope you've seen that a lot of these activities you can do with very little resources, and we try to stay away from paper-based activities and books as much as possible. But what the Couple Trust has put together, which is a really nice resource, especially if you have grade R's, it's called the Alphabet Book. And the Alphabet Book has got everything from the I Spy and all of these textured letters and practicing the letters. So from A to Z, So you can contact the Cuddle Trust if you want to purchase these books for your grade R's. I would suggest that that be something the parent purchase for their child when they get to grade R, and then they have that as evidence of what they've done when they go to grade 1. All right. So now, by the time the child's gone through all of these activities, they know the letter sound and they know what it looks like when it's written. So when you show them a letter, they will be able to tell you that's good, that's oh. If this is as far as you get with your preschoolers, this is amazing. This is laying a very strong foundation for them to move on to grade 1, and those educators can build on that foundation. But once the child knows these two things, they are ready to move on to reading. So I'm going to show you how we introduce reading, not because all preschoolers have to get to that point, but because we want to work with each child. So if a child's ready, then let's not hold them back. Let's move on to the next thing. When you're introducing reading, we are going to only show them phonetic words. That means 3 or 4 letter words that you can sound out. So every single part of that word, every letter that makes up that word is the sound of the phonetic alphabet. So here's some examples. Something like rat, 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 sun, 6, hot, bed, cot, bug, ham, leg, big, jug, cot, bag, bug and bag, pig, net, and here's some 4-letter ones, something like flag. If you listen, you can hear every sound. Flag, step, pink, pink, drop, plug. Those are all phonetic words. So if you're not sure if a word is phonetic or not, spell it out. And if every sound you make is the sound we learned in the phonetic alphabet, it is a phonetic word. There are some words, though, that you need to be careful of, because not all 3 or 4 letter words are phonetic. So here's some exceptions. If you look at car, let's spell it out. K-R. So there's an A, but I don't hear an A sound. I hear an O sound. K-R. B-R. Bar. Car. So those are not phonetic words. Car is not phonetic. If the child tries to sound that out, he's going to say car. I don't know what a car is. So that's not phonetic. And then we also, in English is a very interesting language. There are a lot of double sounds. So things like an S and a H together make sh. E and E next to each other makes E. So those might seem like short words, but the child cannot sound them out. Something like B, C, shop. If they try and sound that out, they might say for shop, stop, stop, stop. And they will never get to shop. So again, we don't want to teach them that yet. They will learn about those sounds, but right now we're laying the foundation and someone else will build on that foundation. So just make sure that any picture or object you're going to give the child, you can sound out every letter of that word and it sounds like the letters you learned in the phonetic alphabet. Okay. So this is how we introduce the children to reading in our classroom. Remember, they know the letter symbol and they know the letter sound. And now we're going to show them how to blend. We first give them objects. Again, this is just because it encourages them. They want to play with the objects. They want to match them. And all we do is we lay out the objects and we discuss with the child, what do you see? I see a bag, a cat, a hat, a bug, a pig, and a cup. Okay, so here is a word card. You can see it's all lowercase. Let's see if we can match the word cards to the object. And so what this little girl will do, she's got her finger and she'll go, the ug, the ug, the ug. and we encourage them to do it a bit faster. Bug. Ah, I see there's a bug. I can match bug to bug. And she's read that card. And we can also use pictures, because it's not always possible to get toys of all of these words, but it's pretty much the same thing. We have the pictures, and then we have the word cards, and the child sounds out the word, he blends it together, and he matches it to the picture. And at that point, they are reading, because the text is giving them information. However, again, English is not a great, oh wait, let me show you an example. So this is what I've been doing with my children on DG School. Okay, we have a cup, a fan, and a 10. Tell me, what does this say? Then the child reads fan, and we link it to fan. Tell me, what does this say? Up, cup, and in 10. Right, and then you can get, as I said, your four-letter one. So we've got gold, fold, and mold. So old, mold. Old, gold. Old, fold. All right. So they can figure out a lot of words once they know the symbol and the sound. But there are some words in English that are words that you see often, and you need to be able to identify them to be able to read sentences, but you cannot sound them out. And these are called sight words. So once the child is able to figure out the words phonetically, you say, okay, here's some words, and we're going to learn these, literally, they're sight words. You see and you say it. You don't try and spell it out. When you see this, this is what it is. And this is one place where we do use flashcards. So we will generally have each of these words on an individual flashcard, and we will show them, okay, this is I. When you see this, it's I. When you see this, it's the. Can you look at this? Tell me what it is? The. Because if they try to sound it out, it's te-he-e. I don't know what te-he-e is, but it's the. They must just see it and say it. You can try and make it a bit more fun. Here's an example of where they've written sight words on a ball. So when the child catches the ball, they point to a word and then they say the word. And then they pass it to the next child and they point to a word and they say the word. So you start with maybe only 2 words on the ball, and as the children know them, you add more words, And this is also a good opportunity to introduce the parents to the concept of homework, because this you would generally only be doing with your older children, your 5 or 6 year olds, and they're going to grade 1 next year, and they're going to get a lot of homework. So it's good for the parents to start making a habit of spending some time every night working with their child doing some homework. So the way that we work this is we have a little a plastic sleeve. We put the flashcards in. We work with the child. We tell them what it is. So I might give them I, he, and was. That goes home on Monday. You've explained to the parents, this is sight words. You need to practice these with the child every night. You must show it to them. They need to know what it is. You can put it up on their wall and they can practice saying it. Child brings it back on Friday. You check with the child, know what it is. If they don't, then it goes back home. You give the parents a call and say, you know what, we worked with this child and we see that they still haven't mastered these flashcards, and is there any way that we can help you, or you try and support them that way. But it's a quite a simple way of just introducing them to the idea of also practicing at home. And the reason that we want, here's first a list of the sight words. So you'll see things like if you see that A on its own in a sentence, we know that it's a. So I am picking up a ball. I'm going to drive in a car. But when the child sees it, they're still thinking a. So they need to learn that when it's standing by itself, it's a. I, he. If you try and sound that out, he, that doesn't work. It's he, the, was, we, to, you, of, are. These are all very common words that you're going to find in most sentences, so the child needs to know what they are. So we start with group 1, then group 2, and then group 3. There are more, but this is about where we get to with preschoolers most of the time. All right, so once they've now got 3 tools in their reading toolbox. They know the letter sound, they know the letter symbol, and they know some sight words. So now they are ready to read sentences. So you can see those are just some basic sentences that we introduce the children to. If you look at the bottom one, that's a sight word, the bus, the child will be able to sound out bus, the bus is. They can sound it out. Sometimes it's interesting, 2-letter words are harder for them, but is red. The bus is red. And they can now read basic sentences. If you do want to purchase beginner reading books, these books, Bob books, are what I would recommend. You can get them at most of the big bookshops here in South Africa now. You will see that they're very phonetic with just 1 or 2 sight words per book, and it's sets. So you start with set 1, and then there's book 1, book 2, book 3, up to book 12. So the child most of the time they will challenge themselves and say, okay, I'm going to start with book 1, and now I've finished book 1, I want to do book 2. But they really work very well because they are very phonetic, very simple, and the stories are very cute as well. So I do recommend book books. And that is the end of our workshop. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope it has been helpful and that you are feeling inspired.